I've been asked quite a bit whether there is an advantage over pitching from the windup versus the stretch, and does the windup provide more velocity than from the stretch? And there is no scientific evidence that claims that the windup does produce more velocity than the stretch itself. So the windup really is a routine to set up the delivery, and it should end with a pitcher in good balance and in an athletic posture. And the windup really just helps get the rhythm of the delivery, helps the pitcher get into the rhythm of the delivery more than anything else. So there's a little more movement, which can obviously cause some issues that starting from the stretch might not. But if it helps a pitcher get into a rhythm, then I'm for it. And that's why I think the windup is still used today. So if a pitcher chooses to use a windup, it's important to keep it simple, because it really is just meant as a step into a power angle, which we'll discuss in another video. But again, it's not going to help you throw harder, it's just going to help you get into a rhythm. There are different types of windups, one in which the pitcher keeps his hands in front of his body, and another one where he can raise his hands over his head as he begins to turn and get into a power angle to throw. Most pitchers today tend to go with a simpler form, just like this picture of Jacob deGrom of the Mets, where he keeps his hands in front of him as he gets his body in motion and turns towards home plate. What I like about this setup is how comfortable it looks. deGrom has his hands in front of his chest, one hand on the ball, searching for a grip, his eyes on home plate, his head over his center of gravity, which we'll go over in another video as well, and that's really his head over his belly button. He's got a little bit of flex, a little bit of bend in his knees, and his feet are about armpit width apart, maybe slightly less, and that's a great setup as he begins his approach to home plate. Now with the windup, a pitcher always starts with a rocker step, which is the glove side foot making a rocker step back or to the side to get the body turned. From that point, you're basically back in the stretch position and you go into leg lift. Watch here as deGrom's left foot turns slightly inside, and that's just a simple rocker step. It's nothing big. And then he gets his posting foot, his right foot, against the pitcher's plate, and from this moment he leg lifts and delivers. Notice his hands have dropped slightly from the chest, but that's to help him get into the rhythm to throw. Eyes on the target, and his head is stable and balanced over his center of gravity. From the time he begins moving in his windup, that head can only go in one direction, and that is towards home plate. It cannot go east and west, otherwise his posture is going to be affected, which will affect his performance. Another type of windup is to take your hands over your head when you go into your rocker step. As we look at an old shot of Sandy Koufax, he does just this. Not many modern pitchers do this anymore, but it is another way to get into rhythm and get into leg lift. Here's Mariano Rivera from the stretch, another common way that pitchers begin their motion towards home plate. Take a look at his hands. They're relaxed in front of him. He's got bend in his knees. His back foot, or his posting foot, is against the pitcher's plate. His chin is in alignment with his front shoulder, eyes on the target, head over his center of gravity. And this gives him a comfortable starting point to leg lift and gets him the ability to put all his energy in a straight line to home plate when he delivers the ball. Same thing with Roger Clemens, same setup, hands a little higher than Rivera's, head over the center of gravity, but he takes his chin and his eyes to the glove with his front shoulder, and it all starts with the setup. So let's review a few rules for setting up on the mound. Number one, it's really important to be comfortable. The more comfortable you are, the more efficiently you'll be able to get into your straight line to home plate. And with that, you want to hold your hands together comfortably. You want to distribute your body weight equally between both legs. You don't want 70% of your power on your back leg and 30 on the front. Sometimes that's taught by a lot of pitching coaches, but that actually will take your momentum away from home plate when you go to initial leg lift. You want your feet armpit width or slightly less, and you want to have a slight bend of both knees, and you want your head over the center of gravity, which is your belly button, and you don't want your head going in an east-west manner away from home plate. Again, there's no scientific correlation between using a windup and throwing harder with more velocity, but I wanted to show you DeGrom one more time from the windup just because it looks so easy. A short rocker step into leg lift, and this is how it should be done if you go from the windup. Okay, one last thing. I get asked this all the time. Where should a pitcher stand on the pitcher's plate when they're getting ready to make a pitch? Should it be on the far left? Should it be on the far right? And the answer is actually in the drag line of their follow through. So in other words, when a pitcher releases a ball, their back foot actually will drag in the dirt towards home plate. And that is an indicator of release point efficiency. Tom House, who's a pitching guru in the United States, said it best about the pitcher's drag line. He said, "The best pitchers in the game find that their most efficient and effective starting position on the rubber is that position which results in a drag line that finishes on the center line between the middle of the rubber and the middle of home plate." So as we take a look at Greg Maddux doing his rocker step and hands over head old school windup, watch his right posting foot. As he delivers the ball, his foot turns towards home plate, and his toes actually scrape against the dirt to create a drag line. And you'll notice he started on the left side of the rubber. His drag line finishes in the center of the mound towards home plate. So that's a great way to figure out where to stand on the mound. If your drag line is in a certain area, then you need to adjust where you are on the pitcher's plate to make sure that drag line finishes in the center of the mound towards home plate. A drag line is a signature of each pitcher, and no two drag lines are the same. Your drag line will be different than my drag line, but it will give us an indication of where we should stand on the pitcher's plate so that we're as efficient as we possibly can, and every movement we have is in a straight line with home plate.